Good morning, children. I hope you have seen the previous video of the Constitution where I have explained about the Indian Constitution, that is the mixture of rigidity and flexibility. I have already explained you about how the amendment can be taken place and what are the limitations for amending the Constitution. Too many amendments leads to chaos and disturbances. Right, and then there was no time limit given for the ratification of the state. Less importance was given to the state. This was a minus point for the amendment in the Indian Constitution. Right, and then the lack of procedures for resolving deadlocks over amendment bills. This was also another negative point in the amendment of the Indian Constitution. Right, children. So I hope so people have understood. Right. So this video is in continuation with the previous one. Now I'm going to explain you about the conventions. Right, the meaning of conventions of the Constitution and what does it leads to. Right, what are conventions in depth and plus its importance. Right, so let's start now. Right. Okay, conventions of the Constitution. First, children, let me tell you the meaning of the Constitution. It means a way in which something is usually done. Right, maybe a practice of making moral judgment. Right, so I'm going to explain you what are conventions now. Conventions can be defined as the unwritten rules. Unwritten rules, children, means it cannot be enacted by the Constitution, but still it has the same level, it has the same status as the written rules and regulations have in the Constitution. Right, children? So conventions can be defined as the unwritten rules of political morality. Political morality means public ethics. Right, that means practice of making moral judgments. It deals with public officials and the methods they use. What methods they use ethically, it has to be right, or behavior which are followed by the power holders for the sake of convenience or the profit. Right, children? These can be also described as a customs, right, of the Constitution, or as political tradition which are followed by the office holders of the government. Right, children? So I hope so people have understood what are conventions. Sort of a habit, children, a way in which something is usually done. Right, and basically these conventions are being implemented by the power holders or whosoever at the top authority for the sake of convenience, or the profit, or you would rather say they want to earn the profit, or else you rather say for the sake of convenience. And maybe it can also be described as a customs of the Constitution or as political tradition which are followed by the office holders of the government. Right, children? So if you see in simple words, we can define conventions are as unwritten rules of political behavior or as a political customs of Britain. Just as social relations are categorized by customs of the society, political relations in society are also categorized by political customs, like that conventions. The conventions means political customs. Right, children? So I hope so people have understood what do you mean by conventions. Right, now let's move like the unwritten rules of political morality. Next, the customs of the Constitution or as political tradition. And the most important thing is that the Notus Juris Dicey describe these as the conventions of the Constitution. They describe these customs, political customs, as the conventions of the Constitution. Right, children? So come on to next slide now. Now come on to the nature of conventions. Now what is the nature of convention? Convention you know very well now. Political customs, right? The rules and regulations which are being followed by the power holders for the sake of their goodwill, profit and convenience. Right, so for understanding the nature of convention, we must analyze their origin and basis. Right, so every convention originates as a practice which is adopted by the person responsible for implementing the system or an institution. They adopt it either for the sake of convenience or for efficiency or as the best available method of accomplishing their task. The successful use of practice make possible its adoption by others. When it continues to be followed by others and earns an informal recognition as the way to do the task, it takes the form of a convention. Right, children? So I hope so people have understood what is the nature. Again repeat. So for understanding the nature of convention, we must analyze first of all their origin. Kahan se originate? From where they have originated, right? So every convention originates as a practice which is adopted by the persons responsible for implementing the system. And why they adopt it? They adopt it either for the sake of convenience or for efficiency or as the best available method of accomplishing their task. Why? Because they wanted to accomplish their task. That's why they have adopted conventions. And basically they have accomplished their task in the administrative department, right children? The successful use of the practice makes possible its adoption by other. Now obviously everyone started, these at the top level, the authority makers started, implementing this. That means it is also followed by others now. So when it continues to be followed by others and earns an informal recognition as the way to do the task, it takes the form of a convention, right? So I hope so people have understood what are conventions, right? Let's move on to another slide now. Now the features of the constitution. It is an unwritten informal practice or rule of conduct. Basically you can describe it as a rule of conduct. It is not made and enacted, it gradually grows. It is not enacted in the constitution, children, but it has the same level the written rules have in the constitution. It originates as a mode of doing a thing smoothly and efficiently. Its long usage and acceptance, that is, it is bound to be used in future, leads to the recognition of a practice as a convention, right? Next, a convention is of the nature of a rule of political morality. A practice becomes a convention when it satisfies three tests, right children? Let's move on to it. Maybe we are coming on to that. Now what is it? A practice becomes a convention when it satisfied three tests. It has been followed in the past, it is being followed at present, it is expected to be followed in future also. So that means British Constitution has been working with the help of a large number of conventions. Basically conventions are political customs, children, don't get confused, right? So conventions means political customs, and power holders have to implement this, so for their own convenience, for their own government, right children, and for their own smooth way of work, right? So that they do their work efficiently, right children? So this is what our conventions all about, right? So move on to importance now. Now its importance. The importance of conventions are as follows. Now children, the very first of all, conventions lessen the rigidity of the rules. Now why we need conventions, children? Conventions are natural need for all laws, because without conventions these cannot be implemented and used in actual practice. Laws by nature are rigid and formal rules of behavior, which for their application need convention as much as machine need lubrication for their operation. The best example, right children? Every constitutional law has to operate in the environment, and this become possible only when it is supplemented and implemented with the help of convention. That means it helps law in implementation, though without execution of laws it never came into practice. So who helped in executing of the laws? It is and what are the things that help in execution of the laws? The best example is conventions. Right children? Next, conventions are essential for keeping the constitution in true with changing circumstances. Now what do you mean by this? A constitution has to change with every major change in the environment in which it operates. Such changes can be easily brought about by conventions. Conventions as such perform the essential function of helping the constitution to keep upgraded with the time. Conventions provide for a flexibility and informality which is always required for implementing the provisions of the constitution and the laws. Right children? So to need to keep the constitution upgraded, right? So what helps the constitution upgrading? To keep pace with the time, it obviously who helps the constitution? The conventions, right? So they provide flexibility and informality which is always required, right children? Now next, conventions are natural and essential products of social and political evolution. What is it now? Conventions are natural to all constitution. In particular, these are natural and essential for an unwritten and evolutionary constitution like the Constitution of Britain. In absence of a written constitution, conventions provide the means for an orderly and systematic organization and working of the British government. The US Constitution has been both a very brief and a very rigid constitution. Conventions have helped it to change and develop in accordance with the needs of the people, as well as the big changes which have been continuously coming in the socio-economic environment of the American society. Right children, so these are perfect examples like Britain, obviously unwritten rules and regulations, so they have to adopt the conventions, and plus America, whose constitution is very rigid. So conventions help them out in implementing flexibility. Right children? Next, conventions are essential for all mixed constitution. Now, what do you mean by this? Constitutional law is always rigid, definite and fixed. Everyone knows. It can never really permit a mixture of two extreme forms of government like monarchy and democracy. Such a mixture can be made and used only with the help of convention. In the UK, a mixture of monarchical, aristocratic, and democratic features in the constitution has been possible only because of the emergence of several suitable conventions. Right, children. So I hope so people have understood this point. Like they have given the perfect example of Britain, right, where it is a mixed government, right, a mixture of monarchical, aristocratic, and democratic features, right. So who helped out in implementing the mixed rules and regulations? Obviously, the conventions, right? Conventions, the political customs, right. Next, now, conventions govern the actual working of the constitution. The actual working of a constitution largely depends upon conventions. Conventions determine the actual operation of the laws of constitution. Every student of politics is interested not only in understanding the legal and constitutional framework of the state, but also in analyzing the actual working of constitutional system. For this purpose, he has to study both the law and conventions. This alone can help him to analyze and explain the gap between the legal framework and the actual working of the framework, children. So this is the best example that the student who are interested in politics, they need to analyze, right, children? So here the children has to study, who wants to study the politics, both the laws and the convention, and obviously it alone can help him to analyze and explain the gap between the legal framework and the actual working of that framework. This is what a convention is all about, right, children? Now, I hope so people have understood the importance of the conventions, children. Like, what are the importance of the conventions? It lessens the rigidity of a laws, keeping the constitution true with changing circumstances, natural product of social and political evolution, essential for all mixed constitution. It governs the actual working of the constitution. So I hope so people have understood, children. And the best example was the British constitution that can implement, the convention, so that it upgrade its constitution, right, with the changing times, right, and save its government from the revolt. The constitute conventions are what? Political customs, children, a thing which is usually done and then it is followed by others. And basically these conventions are being adopted by the authority, the power holders, the authorized signatories, the authority, right, which is at the top, and where it is being implemented in the administrative department, right, children? So I hope so people have understood what are conventions, children. So we'll listen to it attentively, right, children? Okay, till then, thank you.